Well, good afternoon. Happy Friday, June 27th. Mark Milam here, your mortgage professional. Pretty good week. Hey, we'll take it. We got some good news on inflation today. The personal consumption expenditures coming in right about at estimates 2.3% year over year. That's dangerously close to the Fed's target rate of 2%. So we're trending in the right directions thus far. Tariffs not taking a toll on inflation. We'll get to that a little bit later. Let's first talk about what happened here with the personal consumption expenditures in the granular data, and I'm going to blow this up just a little bit for you to look at. If we scroll down here to housing, which in the PCE, housing or shelter, represent a little over a fourth of the overall number. So this is a very heavily weighted formula. You can see here for the month of May, we posted a 0.3% increase in shelter expense. You can see going back the prior months, those increases were pretty stable at 0.3 to 0.4%. What that really means is annualized over the past 12 months, housing, according to personal consumption expenditures, has appreciated at 4.2% annually. That's probably a little optimistic, and I feel like this data is lagging significantly. We'll shift now to the Federal Housing Finance Agency's Home Price Index. They publish this once per month, and this is the most recent publication. Came out on June 24th. Look at what they're saying. U.S. house prices fell 0.4% in April, according to the Federal Housing Finance Agency. Now, the big difference here, what we're talking about, is that PCE is measuring rents, and the FHFA is measuring home prices. So these are really two different animals, but they should be somewhat correlated. I mean, you wouldn't have rising rents while home prices are falling. Typically, that wouldn't be a dynamic that you would see. And if you go to any other metric out there, whether that's Zillow or the Apartment List National Rent Index, you can take a look and see that rents are actually declining right now year over year with any sort of more modern metric. But when we get to these government metrics on inflation, particularly as it pertains to housing, they're so lagging that they're giving a false indication. In other words, we're seeing an upward pressure on the overall inflation number, particularly thanks to housing, because it's such a large percent of personal consumption expenditures. And really, even if you zeroed it out or really put a more realistic estimate of rents in there, we would have come in underneath consensus estimates for inflation. So inflation really not appearing to be a problem, and that leads to a narrative competing against our Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, who has indicated he's in no rush to cut the federal funds rate because he's uncertain of the impact of the government's tariffs. Well, we're starting to see some polite dissent amongst the Fed members. Last week, we got Christopher Waller, Fed governor, who stated that he could see a Fed rate cut as early as July. That's something he could support. We're kind of getting the same notion here now from Fed Governor Michelle Bowman, who has said she favors a July interest rate cut if inflation stays low, which it just did. And essentially what she's going on to say is that these tariffs appear to be a non-factor as it pertains to inflation. So Jerome Powell finding himself a bit on an island, and with less than a year remaining in his tenure, it's kind of obvious that we're starting to see potential candidates to replace Jerome Powell line up with a more dovish stance on what should happen with the Fed funds rate. Don't be surprised to see the percentage increase for a Fed rate cut in July continue to go up. Last week it was about 10%. This week it's about 20%. Wouldn't surprise me at all as we get into early July, especially if inflation data remains tame, to see that continue to rise. Still, the odds are against a July cut. Bank on a September cut to the Fed funds rate. That's currently trending around 70 to 75% probability for September. If I can be of any service to you over the weekend, don't hesitate to reach out, mark.milam@highlandmtg.com. Have a good weekend.